I'm on like something like
What are you? What is it? No, see. Just small. It's 9 o'clock. This is the 28th of December, and it's time for the Legal County Capital Improvement Board to call the meeting to order. Ms. Loudermilk, will you call the roll, please?
Sure. Mr. Patterson.
Here.
Mr. Schweitzer.
Here.
Mayor Bennett.
Here.
Mr. Marvel.
Here.
Ms. Claypool. Ms. Conley.
here.
Are there any additions or revisions to today's agenda?
Sorry.
Hearing none.
Should not go that way.
Does everyone have the opportunity to review the minutes of the November 23rd meeting? Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor by aye. Aye. Motion's approved. Passed. Under old business, item number 5.1, an update on the extension center management with Tania.
Good morning.
Morning.
Okay, so we're reporting on the month of November, this month. During November, we hosted 11 events. This accounted for 16 total event days. Total attendance for the month was a little over 800. Gross revenue was about 67,000, and parking revenue was $1,600, a little over $1,600. You can see the list of events that we had in November. We had Advise Insurance was here. They've actually booked several events with us, so they had 3 events in November. We had the Carl Erskine documentary viewing, which was shown kind of all around the state. The CBB headed up that event. Wabash Valley YMCA had a fundraiser here. Hoosier Energy had some training seminars. We had the VNA Hospice of the Wabash Employee Recognition, Wabash Valley Breast Cancer Survivors Board of Directors meeting, Truth at Work meeting. Terre Haute Association of Realtors had their second event here. They did a holiday party. Purdue Extension had a Women in Agriculture Conference committee meeting. We'll be holding their large conference for them next year. So this was kind of a meeting leading up to just some pre-planning of that event. We fed the Missouri State University football team when they played ISU. And then we had Work One had a conference here as well. So the next 2 pages really just show you November stats, how many events by event type. We had meetings kind of led the charge for November. In terms of attendance, banquets brought more attendance, and banquets and revenue is more under the banquet category. And then you can see our year-to-date stats, breaks it down by event type, attendance by type, gross revenue by event type, and then year-to-date gross revenue, with October being our highest grossing month that we've had to date since April. For food and beverage, we had a lot of, I would say, easier events this past month. We did have a new food and beverage director who started the middle of the month, so he has really taken 30 days and just kind of just really worked in the kitchen and worked with his staff to kind of see, you know, what's going on, what are the new processes and procedures that he can implement to create some efficiencies on the food and beverage side. So he has a list of items that he is working on starting to implement, which we sit down and talk through those, and he's got some really great ideas, and I think he'll be able to really create some efficiencies in the kitchen, especially. We had our first concession event during the Carl Erskine event. We sold popcorn and nachos and things like that. Normally we do a lot of banquets, but concessions are something that we can do for events. So we did $600 in revenue for, I think we had about 130 something people for that event. So I would say that was a pretty successful concession event for something small. We had a lot of deep cleaning in our kitchen, November, pulling things out, really scrubbing floors. We had a few issues with the dishwasher that were fixed, and then our ice machine was deep cleaned by B&B. We contracted them to service that machine twice a year for us to drain it, sanitize it, really clean it, and then refill it. Operations, audio, visual. We've added some additional security signs to the stairwells of the parking garage. If you've got in the elevators today, if you parked in the garage, you'll notice that there are cameras inside the elevators now. So we do have some signage that's going to be going, some stickers that will go inside the elevators that let folks know that they are under surveillance when they're inside that those elevators too. But we're trying to add additional signage in any areas that we can. So if you have any suggestions about additional signage that needs to go up, please let me know and we'll take care of that. Maintenance bill to cart for out of scrap wood for our polish, our silverware burnisher. So now we can kind of move that around the building as needed. When we have events taking place in the ballroom, we can move it from one place to another, so it's not being heard in certain areas, and we can still have someone polishing, so we're not having to run all the way upstairs or downstairs to do that. We went through monthly inspections of fire extinguishers and our AEDs. We had Christmas trees were purchased last month, and all that decor went up. We had a day where we just spent kind of decorating the building and decorating the trees. And then we're waiting on a quote still for additional cameras in the parking garage from Envelop IQ, who did all of the cameras previously. And then we had a meeting with Ross with Circle Design to discuss the additional power needs. We're still waiting on a plan back from them. We talked to them early last month, and he was supposed to be meeting with this team to come up with a some kind of, I guess, a more intricate plan as to what we need, so that then we could start getting some quotes for the additional power that's needed. So we keep following up on that. For sales and marketing, during the month of November, 16 definite events were contracted, so that was about $75,000 in estimated future revenue. 3 of these events are in the month for the month of business, and 7 events booked will take place in 2023. And currently what is on the books, they've got 52 proposals that are out right now for, really not this year, but all for 23 and 24. And then we've got 10 contracts that are out for future years also. Totaling, looking at our tentative, that's over $400,000 in business. And then the contracts that we have out right now are about $73,000 in business. Site tours, didn't have a lot of site tours. The month of November, we had FSA counseling that came in. And then Shelley participated in MPI, which is Meeting Planners International, one of their coffee chat meetings. It's basically an online meeting with other planners to talk about the venue. So it was kind of a virtual tour that she did with those folks. Community involvement, Pam was a guest speaker at Women in Leadership Network event for St. Mary of the Woods last month for the women's basketball team. She was really honored to be asked to speak to them. And then we participated in the Downtown Terre Haute Advisory Board, the CBB monthly tourism meetings, and the Chamber tourism meetings. And then you can see kind of a list of all of the promotion and advertising that we've had going on the past month. Really, a lot of what we've done this past month has been marketing for our New Year's Eve event that's taking place this weekend. So we hit that really hard the middle of the month in early December. Going to the next page, you can see our website traffic, what our main pages are. Main page, had 281 clicks this past month. The Larry Bird Museum remains to be in the top 4 pages that are clicked on. We just have a small amount of information on that page, but it tells us that people are interested. They come to our site and they're looking at that page to see what's going on. And Google reviews are at a 4.6, and there was a really nice review from Vera Kyle with the YMCA on our reviews, so I posted that in there too. And then you can just see some of our Facebook posts and some of the Facebook Insight data that is posted in there as well. And then for numbers, definite events, I've kind of changed this a little bit. I've taken 2022 off since we're at the end of the year. We only have 2 events left for the year. So we've moved to 20, we'll be looking at 23, 24, and 25 moving forward through the next year. Definite contracts, right now we have 38 contracts that are out, which totals a little over $300,000. We have 10 contracts that we're waiting on getting back for next year. That's a little over $73,000, and then we have 44 proposals that are still out for 2023. And then looking at 2024, we've got 1 contract that's definite, 1 firm, 4 tentatives, and then we do have 1 booking for 2025. Total funnel from now through 2025 is $814,000 in potential business. But looking at 2023 is I keep up with a PACE report every week, and I look to see, what we're doing and where we were, as we go into next year, I'll look at where we were the same time this past year. And looking at what we have in revenue right now, like what's on our books right now, is very close to what we're ending the year with. So we're ending the year with a certain amount of revenue, but going into a new year with that same amount of revenue on the books, and we haven't even started that year. So to me, I feel really good about where we are in terms of revenue, because now we have 12 months to still book more business and put more revenue on the books. And so I think next year will be a pretty successful year. We feel really good about going into a new year with where we are. Any questions?
Oh, yes. The vandalism.
The what?
The vandalism.
Oh,
in the
yes, in
garage.
the elevator. Yes.
You want to hit on that?
Sure. So on the 21st, I think it was the 21st, we had three young men got into the elevator. I just happened to be at home looking at cameras because most of us were on vacation, and they were kind of wandering around the parking garage and got into the elevator and then got out and got into the elevator again, immediately pulled out spray paint, cans of paint, spray painted our camera, and then continued to vandalize the interior of the elevator, spray painted all over the interior of it. We have found out who one of the individuals are, and we've turned that name into the police department. So they've already been in touch, from my understanding, with one of the families to identify the other kids that were involved. I believe they're all minors. So we have a camera that will probably need to be replaced. We're currently getting a cost for that camera. We were able to, our maintenance guy was out there cleaning up all of the spray paint out of the elevator, but the camera it was just installed, a couple weeks ago and just became active 2 weeks ago. So that camera, I don't know that we can clean that camera up without damaging it. So we're probably gonna need to get a price on what is it. If we can't get it cleaned, we're getting a cost on what will it take to replace that camera, and then have somebody rewire it again. So, yeah.
May I ask a question? Is there an intent to ask the families to pay for those costs?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. We were asked, what the cost of the damage is, and that's why I want to get a cost of the camera, and then what that labor cost is, because it's not something that we would install. It's something that, I believe Sycamore would probably have to install or envelop. So yeah, as soon as I have that, we'll turn that number into the PD, and then I have not seen the police report yet, so as soon as we get that police report, I will send that over to you. But we gave the police video footage of, they were in the garage for a little while. We know what vehicle they were driving. We've tracked them all through the garage, so we turned over all of the footage and still images, and we had a really crystal clear shot of what the boys look like.
3 boys in the elevator. Tennille sent me the images. The one little dude with the spray can that's doing the camera, it's a perfect shot of him. I mean, hello.
Wasn't smart.
And the other little dude that's standing there watching him, well, that's see you too. The third guy who's got a hood on is taking a camera shot of the other guy while they're doing it. You can't tell who he is.
Oh, we have images of him without his ski mask.
Yes, I told Tennille, well, she had it solved within 15 or 20 minutes of who they were by just an employee that works here that thought that they might know who they were. And then she gets on Facebook, and I did too. And there's no question who it is. But he's a little older than what I originally thought. I thought they were, 14 or 15. No, they're not. But anyway, I think part of the retribution should be that those 3, the next time there's a vandalism, a spray paint thing, they should be made by the courts to come in and help clean it. I don't know whether that can be done or not, but it's up to the judge.
Are they gonna be charged with vandalism?
Yes, I mean, we would, yeah, it's you guys' building, so, but I think John and I have talked about this before, when we have vandalism and any kind of damage. And if we can find out who it is, that we would prosecute. Yes. And I believe that they also did some damage at ISU as well, because an hour before, there were other officers in the elevator that I saw. There were 2 officers walking our garage, and Brady said they were ISU police. So he reached out to them as well. So I think that they were over maybe on their campus beforehand. Yeah.
And, I asked about when we found out what the names were. I asked Brian what he thought about broadcasting, putting them on Facebook. And the police can't do it, and the courts can't do it, but we can.
There's no prohibition of it. A lot of states have laws that just prohibit posting any pictures of minors. Not a lot, some. There's none here, and I couldn't find any prohibition. Unless there's some sort of exploitation, and with them, camera on them with spray paint can, I don't think that's exploitative.
It's disappointing.
Yeah.
It's disappointing, for
Yeah.
sure. And Dawn has been, working on trying to get the graffiti in the other stairwells. We have to paint over the other graffiti that's in there, so he's working on, trying to get that taken care of too.
Okay. Anything else? What's that?
So that's, so we can't have nothing now. Going on with the.
All right, does the board have any questions of Janine? Item 5.2, an update on the operating budget, cash flow, Jason Similar with Baker Tilly. Morning, Jason.
Morning. I think you all have a copy of the cash flow update that we sent out yesterday. As you getting that in front of you, just an update on the food and beverage estimates or revenues you've been collecting. In December, you collected $266,000. That is shown up there in December. For the year, you collected a little over $3,050,000. That's about 11% increase from what you collected in 2021. If you remember, 2021, you collected about $2,742,000. So almost $300,000 more than what you collected last year. So again, food and beverage is coming in strong and increasing each year. Only rule change, if you're looking at this compared to last year, as I mentioned last month, I did go all the way up to January 2024, just because you make your bond payment in either December. You made it in December of this year, so you've already made the payment for this year, the January payment. But just to show you at the end of 2024 or into 2023, January 2024, if you look at the second page there, you're looking about a balance of around $3.2 million with the projections that we're showing. One thing I did want to bring up, I hate to bring it up because you've just opened a brand new, beautiful building, but something you might want to think about is setting aside some money for an annual maintenance or capital projects as things do occur that you're not aware of or things do need to be replaced. So that $3.2 million, nothing has been set aside specifically for capital maintenance type projects. That's something that we may want to think about doing.
Thank you for pointing that out, because I did see where Indianapolis their CIB just approved to redo all the carpet throughout.
We do have a capital plan that I've been working on that I'm hoping that next month we'll be able to take a look at that will show like carpet longevity, dishwasher, things like that, things like expected lifespan. At what point do we need to start putting money into things and replacing certain items?
Can you work with Jason then on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we should do that. Any other questions? Jason? 5.3 is an update on the Larry Bird Museum. Jenny?
Things are moving along, as planned. We are looking to send out RFPs, within the month. So in January, we'll get those sent out. We're finalizing the language in those. Garmong has, they are still moving some of the electrical. That is expected to be done by the end of January. One of the invoices that the finance committee approved was a small charge for light fixtures. So the lighting that has been installed with Light Lab, they did send us several samples, but some of the fixtures we did have to pay for just to make sure that everything's working as it should. Anybody else on the museum committee, Shelley, or anybody have any updates to?
Cataloging away. We finally have access now to the bulk of the collection. So I have been going in as often as possible, and going in and cataloging as much as possible. So that part is moving along now.
I can go over timeline on the
Sure,
RFP.
absolutely.
Yeah, I printed off 10 copies of this and left them on my printer last night. So this is a timeline that's been approved by Terry and the museum committee. So we're actually forwarding legal notice of the availability of RFP tomorrow. It'll be published on January 3rd and 10. We'll ask Hilferty and Madursky to forward the RFP to their known contractors and providers. And we should clarify that it's the committee's decided to divide this into two. There was a hold on everything really at the recommendation of Madursky to try to have one RFP that included everything. Audio visual, which we have no rights to at this point, the display cases, and this one is mostly for the displays and related material. So that should then be responded to by the 24th of January. The auditor's office, Cheryl and Jim will be involved in that. And I'll keep you posted to Cheryl as I copy Jim on these things. And then, I'm sorry, that's the deadline for questions. February 2 is the deadline for receipt of responses. And then about a week to review those. And then the week of February 13, the museum committee will interview those if things are, sufficient to interview. And then the hope is to, at your regular February meeting, approve a vendor. And this will be mostly for display items, I guess is a good way to say it, and some related electrical and lighting. And I'll circulate that outline to everybody later today for the timeline.
That's part of 6.3 on your agenda.
Okay. Any questions? All right, thank you, Terry. 5.4 is an update on legal matters. Brian Bosma.
Thank you, President Marvel. Few things that have been completed. The pros consulting agreement was executed and they're ready to proceed here after the first of the year. Pursuant to the selection committee's request, we asked them to limit their fees to $175,000, which is about 25 to 35 less than what they had submitted. They went through a kind of just called value engineering process of limiting somewhat their public meetings. They had 3 days of those public discussions, limited that to 2, brought some of the design, non-essential design out and got that down to $175,000. That's been executed pursuant to the board's last month approval of that. And Leon and his team are ready to move forward. We've worked closely with Terry on and I should say we work closely with RJL Solutions on all of that, including the final contract. So appreciate Victoria, Rachel and their team working so closely with us. And work closely with Terry and the museum committee on finalizing the RFP, and we'll get that final form by January 3rd. We did receive an email, you all received an email from Doug Kowalski, who is in the process of renewing your annual alcoholic beverage permit. So there were a few questions on there. We want to know if you, in the last year, you've been convicted of a felony. We need to know. I think that probably would have been in the paper, so we doubt that it's true. But also, if you've had a change in address or contact information, that all has to be updated. So I'll send another email out just to tickle everybody to remind you to let us know if there's any other changes. The items you have before you, we spent a good little bit of time in the last couple of weeks on the property and easement exchange agreement. I'm going to go over a couple of details of that. The long documents that you received last night, and I apologize for being last night, but we literally were exchanging revisions yesterday. There's an agreement that is subject to approval here under Resolution 2022-13. It essentially approves the exchange of updated utility easements to service this building and the parking garage, and an access agreement to the parking garage on vacated 8th Street, which we do not have currently. It's been on our things to-do list here for the last year and a half. It exchanges those easements for a perpetual easement of 100 spaces in the parking garage. The issues remaining on that, presuming that's the direction you all want to go, is the taxes that may be assessed on those spaces if they are used for private purposes, and the location of the spaces. So if you will pass that down, this is not, this location diagram is referred to in what you're approving today. It is not included in what you approved today, because I didn't know if anyone had seen this proposal, which was received by the 4 surrounding business properties that are receiving this easement. And those 4 properties are the Holman property east of 9th Street, the terminal property, the copper property, I'm missing one. The Fontenette Holdings, which is the state office building property. So the way the proposal was made, those 4 properties would have easements to occupy on page 1, level 1, the first 5 spots in the parking garage, which are now temporary 15-minute parking for people to come in and out. Are all of them that designation, all 5 of those? And then you have the handicap spaces, which are intervening, and then it picks up with the next 30 spaces on level 1. The proposal is that these would be marked as reserved 24 hours. Level 2, you would have the spaces to the far northeastern corner. There would be 31 through 40, 41 through 60, then would be on the west end, and 10 more in the center. And then on level 3, there would be 30 spaces reserved on the west end. And again, these would, under the proposal, these would be marked 24/7 reserved for those 4 entities. So that is yet to be approved by, to my knowledge, anyone here. And then the issue of taxes, and this is the way this works. It's a government use currently. If there is a private for-profit use, it can be assessed. And the example that I discussed with the attorney for the 4 entities yesterday is which I had personally, professional building owned by a non-profit entity hospital. 75% of the office space there is utilized by the nonprofit, 25% is utilized by independent doctors, for-profit medical practices. 25% of that building will be assessed. The whole thing will be assessed. There'll be taxes assessed on 25% of it because it's not exempt. The governmental portion is exempt. So the proposed uses under the proposal we have before us are mostly for nonprofit and governmental entities, the state office building, Fairhope Chamber, related facilities. That would be today. 40 or 50 years from now, we have no idea who would be using those. So I'm pretty firm on having that tax provision in the easement, that if taxes are assessed on those 100 parking spaces, that they're paid for by the grantees. Honestly, we think anything other than that is not an appropriate use of public funds, and State Board of Accounts agrees on an anonymous basis on that. So that's pretty much the content of 6.1, the 2022-13 resolution. The resolution provides that the forms attached are draft, and the president can make changes that the president approves to those agreements, so we can resolve any remaining issues. And then I'll mention quickly 2022-14, which I apologize for getting it to you last night. I was informed over the holiday weekend, didn't see it, that the mayor wanted to bring forth a $450,000 grant approval to the Turn to the River project, which has been mentioned at the last 2 meetings. So that's the content of resolution 2022-14. And then 6.3 is just a motion for the museum committee to proceed with the RFP, which Terry will explain.
Do you want to mention anything about the property between the Copper Bar and?
Oh, I left that out. So this agreement also provides that the portion of the property transferred to the CIB by donation that is now enclosed within the great railing next to the Copper Bar, the portion of that within the railing is transferred by quitclaim back to the original owner. It's small, I don't know, we have to have, unfortunately, since we need to have it surveyed, we could probably do it without a survey and get a tabletop description of that from our current surveyor, so that's the other transfer. And thanks, John, for that. Happy to answer any questions on any of those.
You're ready to discuss 6.1? You're ready to discuss 6.1 then? Property.
I guess we should move on to new business, which is the consideration of CIB Resolution 2022-13, item 6.1. Any discussion?
I wanted just to say a couple things. One, this has been going on forever. And the goal here, and I was really pushing that with John and with Greg, just to get it resolved, because it just keeps hanging around. We gotta get these easements resolved. And on the parking side of it, when those properties were donated to us, there were 50 spots that served the state office building and 50 spots that served the Clabber Girl building. So that's where the 100 spots comes from total. And it only makes sense to give those spots back. That was the original verbal agreement that we had. So that's the purpose of that. But everything's in here now, right, Brian? I mean, it's all here, all those easements, everything is,
Everything that
nothing
we
left.
want, everything that we want is in there.
Okay. That's where I wanted to get, Mr. Chairman, to get this resolved, so we get it off the table and keep, be done with it. We've been open now for almost a year, and it's time to get these things resolved. So that was one of the reasons why I was pushing that. I feel really good about the parking spots. Seems like there's a couple of issues that still have to be resolved, but most have been addressed. So this allows John to continue those negotiations and bring a final document for approval for everybody to sign. So that's good. That's what we want you to be able to do and get this behind us. So I just wanted to make that statement more than anything.
So Mayor, you're saying you're good with the location of the spots?
Yeah, that's kind of a new twist. I think we need to continue to talk about that. I was not aware of that prior to today, shared that information with me. I guess I'm not surprised that there's a draft of that, but that's the first time I've seen it. So I think we need to continue that negotiation.
Yeah, can Neil be involved in that conversation? When I look at this, I don't know the
There's-
temporary
I have more than
spots,
7.
how it would impact delivery and operations. So I just, if Neil can be involved in that conversation as well.
I think it needs more discussion, Brian. My first look at it was minutes ago.
And so I don't know if you were involved in any of this. I feel that you should be.
The first 5 parking stalls, those 15-minute loading zone, we use these all the time for customer. These are stalls that we have clients that pull into if they're dropping off contracts or client meetings, decorators pulling in to drop off, items. We usually have our officers park in here too during events because we like their vehicles to be able to be seen, you know, so these are used quite a bit. That would be where my first concern would be. And we do wanna make sure that, I mean, anywhere else in the garage is fine. We have our employees park on level 2 and higher, just so that we are allowing lower floor parking to our patrons who are coming in, our attendees, so that way they're not feeling like when they pull in the garage, that they're having to keep going and going and going up to the top to make it easier on our event attendees and that. So, you know, my request would be if there was a way that we could just keep it a little bit consistent with so many stalls on one side and maybe going higher up in the garage. There's elevator access to make it easier for individuals. But I'd like to keep a certain amount of stalls closer, you know, to elevators for our event attendees also, to make it easier for them.
And then I'm just wondering if there was concern about the 24/7.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. We all know these government jobs rate to 4, and most of the time, those folks aren't gonna be there after 4 o'clock, so I would hate to
Yeah.
prohibit people from parking in those spots just because, and especially there's nobody there.
Yeah, I mean, there's gonna be times where there might be festivals downtown where we might have events taking place here, or we might have a convention, and if we have a festival or something, you might have an influx of folks that are parking in the garage, and then if folks are they have a 24/7 parking pass, they might take up some of that revenue opportunity that you might get from some of that festival parking also. So it's just kind of taking that into consideration also. And what we've been doing currently is we had set those temporary passes for the Work One building from, some of those folks have passes from like 8 to 5. We have a few individuals that come in really early and they stay late. So we've adjusted their parking passes to, I think we have someone who's usually here to like 7 or 8 o'clock every night. And so we've adjusted those, but initially what we had done was we had set those from like 8 to 5 or 7 to 6 or something like that. But it's, I mean, ultimately it's up to whatever you guys wanna do.
Well, I'm glad everything's in here. That's good. I think that's the part that needs to be resolved, so. I think, John, you need to continue those negotiations, include Tennille, as Terry has suggested, and figure out how we get it resolved and be done with that.
So I did include, Tennille, I added the passes. 100 passes, $10 for lost, as we've done elsewhere.
Okay.
And so they can be coded so that they only work during designated business hours. I think that'd be an appropriate change here, because this, the way it is now, it's literally 24/7 reserve. So if you have, you know, more than 300 people that want to park in the garage, there's going to be other places they can't park.
And then we do have like the current reserve spots are painted, and Garmong had it repainted yellow. But now even when you go through there, it's getting hard because, you know, when the floors get dirty a little bit, it is hard to see. So I would suggest there being some additional signage that is maybe in the front of those stalls, like maybe some metal placards or something.
Right.
And some of those stalls do have the windows with the wire going through it. So I don't know how you do that, but I think that might be a better route, is to have some additional signage in front of those stalls, and the folks who do have reserved parking, they could park in those stalls, and that will alleviate, you know, any folks being afraid to park in there. If all those stalls are empty and they're parking elsewhere, no one's gonna park in those stalls, so it's just gonna reduce our parking.
Brian, if you could stay around after the meeting and we can discuss this further with Tennille.
Certainly.
Are there any other questions on 2022-13? Board has.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made and seconded to approve. We need a roll call. Okay. Aye.
Ms. Crapo,
Aye.
Ms. Conley.
Aye.
I show the resolution 2022-13 has been approved.
I'll be sure we include John and Tennille in any final resolution of these matters. If any of you have any thoughts, just email.
Right, moving on now to item 6.2, another consideration of the CIB resolution. This one is 2022-14, approving a matching grant for Turn to the River. Mayor, any further discussion you'd like to?
No, just review that, Art Spaces came to us and made a request, for support of Turn to the River project, and I think it's a perfect fit for what we're doing. It's a reminder that part of the creation of the CIB, one piece of that was to support and fund arts projects in our community as part of the legislative process we went through. That's a major component of that. This will be the first time that we potentially done that. The new projects committee would prefer that we not fund the full amount that was requested, but the $450,000 match doesn't mean there isn't an opportunity for future funding, but at this point, just the match. And I talked to Jason after last month's meeting, just look at cash flows and things. We'll need to plug this in as we move forward. If this is approved today, the recommendation of the new projects committee would be for a $450,000 contribution that would meet the match for the ready grants that Art Spaces has.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded.
Can I add a few things?
Yes,
Just
yes.
fill in the blanks on a couple of things. So the approval is subject to actual receipt of a ready grant, and I wasn't sure if it's been committed. A lot of those have been committed to regions and not necessarily
has.
entity.
It
Has
has,
been, okay.
yes.
And it directs us to prepare a grant agreement that's acceptable to the president, vice president. We've got one we've used elsewhere that has some provisions in it as to use and appropriate use, that kind of thing. So we would anticipate putting that together.
Okay, and work with RGL Solutions on that. They're handling all the ready grants for us
Okay.
locally.
Sure.
Ready? Mr. Patterson.
Aye.
Mr. Sweitzer.
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye.
Mr. Marvel.
Aye,
Ms. Crapo.
Aye.
Ms. Conley.
it has passed. Item 6.3. It's an approval to proceed with the RFP process for museum displays and equipment. We heard Terry talk about it earlier, as well as our attorney. Are there any other questions? Landlord, over.
Second.
I'm getting ahead of you, John.
Go ahead.
Mr. Patterson.
Aye.
Mr. Sweitzer.
Aye.
Mayor Bennett.
Aye.
Mr. Marvel.
Aye.
Ms. Crapo.
Aye.
Ms. Conley.
Okay, Madam Chairman, you have the board's approval to proceed.
Thank you.
All right, that finishes the new business. Item number 7, other business. Any questions or comments from the board members? All right. Our next regular board meeting will be January the 25th, 2023. Spoiler alert, that will be my last opening of the meeting, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Bosma for a vote to elect a new president.
We'll figure that one out.
Pardon me?
We'll figure that one out. You probably will still run those votes, so, because we'll still be the president, unless you don't. We'll figure it out.
6 years is long enough. Anyway,
So you're electing all 4 officers
Yeah.
at the next meeting.
yes. Next board meeting is January the 25th, 2023, here in this room at the same time. Hearing no other comments or questions, meeting's adjourned.